It was supposed to be a day of joy. August 4th, Meghan Markle's birthday, was expected to be celebrated in sleek, curated Instagram posts, polite royal snubs, and perhaps a few public gestures from celebrity allies. After all, birthdays in the Sussex household had become more than personal milestones. They were subtle PR statements, symbolic power plays in the long-running saga between the renegade royals and the establishment they left behind. But this year, the candles on Meghan's cake might not shine as brightly. Instead, a chilling wind of betrayal swept in before the cake was even cut, one that didn't come from Buckingham Palace or the pages of a British tabloid, but from within her own bloodline. A man who once held her tiny hand, dropped her off at school, and stood beside her with pride as she pursued Hollywood dreams had now stepped into the spotlight with a bombshell that threatens to fracture the last remnants of their already strained connection. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. Thomas Markle, the father Meghan has repeatedly distanced herself from, has come forward again. But this time, it's not to beg for forgiveness or defend his dignity on morning television. It's not even to protest his exclusion from royal events or to bemoan her silence. This time, he has said something that not only cuts deeply but rewrites a part of her personal history. According to Thomas Markle, Meghan isn't turning 43. She's not even in her mid-40s. She's turning 48. 48. Just 3 years away from 50, if his words are to be believed. And what's more, he's not whispering this revelation in some anonymous blog post or hidden court affidavit. No, he handed this nuclear confession directly to Tom Bower, the investigative journalist and biographer who has made a name and a fortune off detailing the cracks in the Sussex's public image. And now, in Bower's latest installment of his ongoing royal exposé, this startling claim is printed in black and white, splattered across headlines, and broadcast to millions. For the woman who has fiercely controlled her narrative, curated every detail of her image, and positioned herself as a modern icon, this moment is catastrophic. It's not just about a number. It's about perception, trust, brand integrity, and above all, truth. Because in the world of public figures, especially ones who have built careers on authenticity and female empowerment, even the smallest misrepresentation can trigger an avalanche. The immediate fallout? Meghan's reaction was reportedly one of frozen disbelief. Sources close to her inner circle claim she went pale, stormed out of her production meeting, and issued a firm message through intermediaries. "He's not my father anymore." A phrase that echoes louder than any press release or social media post ever could. But before we dive into the explosive claim itself, before we dissect what it could mean for Meghan's legacy, her marriage, her career, and her credibility, we must first ask the question that's hanging in the air. Why now? Why would Thomas Markle choose this moment, on her birthday, to make such a deeply personal and potentially reputation-damaging revelation? Was it revenge? Desperation? A cry for relevance? Or is there something far more complicated at play? A tangled web of truth, rejection, and a father's last gasp at being heard? It's easy to dismiss Thomas Markle as a bitter outsider, someone discarded by his own daughter when fame finally arrived at her doorstep. After all, his frequent interviews, staged paparazzi photos, and messy public outbursts have made him an easy target for critics. But even the most complicated characters sometimes hold pieces of the puzzle that others ignore. And Tom Bower, the relentless biographer whose previous chapters on Meghan have stirred royal waters, clearly believes Thomas still has value as a source. This wasn't a throwaway comment. It was a strategically placed confession, a revelation meant to make headlines, raise eyebrows, and, perhaps, change the way the public sees Meghan Markle, not just as a duchess, but as a woman. Now, it's important to understand how this claim fits into the larger narrative that Meghan herself has built over the years. From her time on Suits to her activism, from the high-profile royal wedding to the Netflix documentaries and Spotify deals, Meghan has projected a consistent image. She is a woman in control of her story, resilient in the face of adversity, and fiercely independent. But a lie about her age, even one as seemingly superficial as this, could shake the foundation of that image. Ageism is a very real issue in Hollywood and beyond. Many women have faced discrimination simply for growing older. It's no surprise, then that public figures often round down or obscure certain facts. But the accusation from Thomas isn't that Meghan once fibbed to a casting agent to land a role. This is a sweeping, public denial of her true birth year, allegedly kept secret for decades. So how do we verify such a claim? Public records? School yearbooks? Classmates? Past interviews? Already, amateur investigators and online sleuths are scrambling to uncover inconsistencies. Fans are rewatching old Meghan interviews, scrutinizing old photographs, comparing school dates and timelines. And some are beginning to notice the gaps, the years that don't quite line up, the references that now seem slightly off. It's a rabbit hole of timelines and speculation, and with Tom Bower's book now igniting a frenzy, it's only going to grow deeper. Then there's the question of how Harry fits into all of this. Did he know? Was he told something different? Or was he just as shocked as the rest of the world? Insiders claim the Duke of Sussex is deeply frustrated and concerned about the timing of this leak. Some reports suggest that his relationship with Thomas Markle was always a tightrope walk, one Meghan insisted they keep severed. And now, with the old man lashing out again, Harry is allegedly grappling with a complex mix of anger, disbelief, and fear for what this might mean for their future. The silence from the Sussex camp is deafening. There's been no official denial, no statement, no carefully crafted clapback through Archwell, just silence. And in the vacuum of that silence, speculation reigns. Meanwhile, over at the royal front, the response has been curious. Though King Charles and Prince William have remained tight-lipped as always, sources suggest that certain members of the firm are watching the fallout with quiet amusement. Not because they revel in Meghan's personal pain, but because this might validate concerns they've harbored for years. That behind the polished exterior was always someone ready to reshape her past for the sake of power. But there's more than scandal brewing here. There's a deeper emotional thread that runs through the heart of this story. Because whatever you believe about Meghan Markle, whether you view her as a victim or a strategist, a trailblazer or a manipulator, this moment is about something more profound than numbers and dates. It's about a daughter and her father, a family torn apart not by war, but by fame, by silence, by words left unsaid, and now, by words finally spoken. Thomas Markle's confession, true or not, signals a final fracture in their already broken relationship. It was the one thing he had left, the one piece of information no one else could say. And on her birthday, he used it. So the question now is not just, is it true, but why did he need to say it? And even more critically, what will Meghan do next? In the coming chapters, we'll trace the origin of this claim, analyze the timeline, explore the psychology behind family estrangement, and examine how one revelation could ripple through not just one woman's life, but a global brand, a marriage, and a royal legacy. August 4th dawned like any other sunny morning in Montecito, birds chirping, ocean breeze brushing over the cliffs, and the rhythmic hum of luxury SUVs rolling past multi-million-dollar estates. Inside one of those homes, Meghan Markle was expected to be basking in the soft glow of birthday wishes. The Duchess of Sussex, as she's still occasionally called by admirers and detractors alike, had always made her birthday a carefully balanced moment. Not too loud, not too quiet, just enough mystery to spark curiosity, and just enough grace to remind the world she was no longer an actress, but royalty, a philanthropist, and a mother. In previous years, her birthdays had followed a familiar script. A photograph, usually black and white, released to the press or shared through Archwell's minimalist newsletter. Sometimes it was a quote about purpose or aging with dignity. Other times, it was a charity spotlight or a subtle update on one of her projects. The messaging was always intentional, always polished. And this year, as Meghan prepared to mark what she had publicly claimed was her 43rd birthday, expectations were no different. Invitations had been quietly extended to a small circle of confidants. There were whispers of a curated garden lunch, a floral theme, even a meditation session led by a renowned spiritual guide from Los Angeles. Staff had been briefed, security was tightened, and the local baker was reportedly commissioned to create a bespoke cake featuring summer blooms and subtle nods to her biracial heritage. Everything was planned down to the minute, every flower in place, every guest timed with precision. But by mid-morning, something shifted. A disturbance rippled through the carefully arranged calm. It wasn't the paparazzi, those were expected. It wasn't a late guest or a cake delivery gone wrong. It was a headline. One headline, dropped like a grenade across major UK news sites and US tabloids alike. 14 words that ignited a scandal hotter than any August sun. Thomas Markle tells Tom Bower, "Meghan is turning 48, not 43, and I can prove it." At first, it sounded absurd. A father accusing his daughter of lying about her age on her birthday? It read like a plot from a B-list family drama. But then the byline became clear. Tom Bower, the same author who had previously cracked open the glossy shell of Harry and Meghan's departure from royal life. The man who had built a reputation for documenting the truths celebrities want to forget. And now, in the latest chapter of his ongoing exposé on the Sussex saga, he had delivered what might be the most personal and volatile revelation to date. Meghan's staff reportedly saw the headline before she did. Phones buzzed. Texts flew across WhatsApp groups. One assistant, trying to stay calm, tried to delay showing her the article. But it didn't matter. Within minutes, Meghan was informed. According to a Montecito source familiar with her inner circle, her demeanor changed instantly. What had been a light, celebratory atmosphere suddenly turned icy. The once warm glow of her birthday morning dimmed. She stared at the screen for a long time, the source claimed. Pale, silent, not with anger, but with a chilling stillness that those around her had only seen once before. The morning the royal family released their final statement refusing to engage with her and Harry's allegations any further. This, in its own way, felt like a betrayal of similar magnitude. Except this time, it wasn't the crown. It was her own blood. Thomas Markle had chosen today, of all days, to drop this revelation. Not during a quiet news cycle. Not in private. On her birthday. The symbolism was hard to miss. A father who felt discarded. A daughter who had ascended beyond him. And a journalist always hungry for the next twist. Inside the Montecito estate, Meghan reportedly made one brief statement to her assistant before exiting the room and disappearing into her private quarters. Her words were clear, sharp, and unmistakably final. "He's not my father anymore." For years, their relationship had been deteriorating, torn apart by tabloids, miscommunications, betrayals both real and perceived. But until now, there was still a trace of hesitation in Meghan's statements. Even in interviews, she never fully severed the tie. She spoke of hurt, of disappointment, of boundaries. But this was different. This was erasure. Back outside the walls of her estate, the media circus erupted. Every news network, from CNN to Sky News, grabbed the story. Social media timelines were flooded with split-screen photos of Meghan in royal garb and Thomas Markle holding faded photos of baby Meghan in his arms. Age experts were interviewed. Public records were pulled. Reddit forums went into overdrive. Meghan Markle was trending across platforms, but not for her philanthropy or her brand. For her age. And not just her age, but the implication that she had been lying about it for decades. At the core of this chaos was one explosive question. Could it be true? Public records from Los Angeles list Meghan's birth year as 1981, making her 43 in 2024. But Thomas now claimed she was actually born in 1976, suggesting she had shaved 5 years off her age at some point between her acting career and her royal rebranding. In Hollywood, such a move wasn't unheard of. But for someone whose image was built on empowerment and authenticity, this accusation, especially from her father, felt particularly corrosive. And the timing? Utterly cruel or brilliantly calculated, depending on whom you asked. According to Tom Bower, Thomas Markle provided a detailed breakdown of Meghan's early years, claiming discrepancies between her reported school enrollment dates and the timeline of her childhood photographs. He allegedly pointed to family photo albums, letters, even early school forms that had never been released publicly. Bower hinted that these details would be revealed in full in the printed edition of his upcoming book. For now, the chapter preview alone had done enough damage to light a global fuse. The reaction from Meghan's camp was unusually quiet. No official statement. No archwell correction. No lawyer cease and desist threats, at least not yet. That silence was interpreted in various ways. To some, it was dignity. To others, guilt. But behind the silence was likely a flurry of legal consultations and PR strategizing. Meanwhile, guests arriving for the low-key birthday celebration were met with tension. A-list invitees including Serena Williams, Ellen DeGeneres, and Oprah Winfrey were said to have either delayed their appearance or sent quiet apologies. The atmosphere at the estate, once expected to be light and celebratory, shifted into one of crisis management. In the court of public opinion, lines were quickly drawn. Meghan's supporters rushed to her defense, labeling Thomas's revelation a desperate ploy for attention. "You don't go after your daughter like this on her birthday," one popular tweet read. "This is beyond toxic. It's warfare." But others were more skeptical. "If it's not true, why hasn't she denied it?" one comment posed. Another added, "There's always been something off about her timeline. Maybe Tom Bower finally found the missing piece." The narrative had spun far beyond the original quote. Now, it wasn't just about one woman's age. It was about betrayal, trust, and control. The birthday had become a battleground. As night fell over Montecito, the candles on Meghan's cake remained unlit. Whether there was even a cake at all became a matter of speculation. Some claimed Meghan spent the evening alone. Others said Harry tried to salvage the day with a private dinner in their garden. What is known is that no photos were released. No messages were posted. The social media silence, deafening. And in that silence, Thomas Markle's voice echoed louder than ever. By choosing her birthday to drop this accusation, he had ensured maximum attention. But he had also ensured maximum damage, not just to Meghan's public image, but to any remaining thread between father and daughter. It was no longer a story about age. It was a story about truth, about whose version of the past the public would believe, and about whether a woman who once claimed to be misunderstood by the world had misunderstood the limits of her own control. The firestorm had only just begun, but one thing was already clear. This would be a birthday Meghan Markle would never forget. To understand the chaos unleashed on Meghan Markle's birthday, one must first turn their attention not to her father, but to the man who amplified his words and ensured they reverberated across the globe. A man whose pen has become a weapon of calculated precision. That man is Tom Bower. For those unfamiliar with the name, Bower is not just any journalist. He is a biographer with a reputation for relentless pursuit of truth, or at least the version of it that rattles the powerful. His bibliography reads like a who's who of controversial exposes: Simon Cowell, Prince Charles, Boris Johnson, and now, for the second time, Meghan Markle. Where other writers might tread lightly, Bower charges forward with the tenacity of a courtroom prosecutor and the instincts of a seasoned war correspondent. He doesn't tiptoe around reputations. He steps right through them. His first book on Meghan, titled Revenge, sent tremors through the Sussex camp. It painted a picture of a woman both strategic and driven, brilliant, yet divisive. It poked at the polished image Meghan had crafted, suggesting cracks beneath the surface that many refused to see. Yet despite the furor, Meghan never publicly acknowledged Bower's work. Silence, they say, can sometimes be louder than denial. But Tom Bower was far from finished. What many didn't know was that while the dust from the first book was still settling, Bower was already piecing together the second act, gathering new sources, revisiting old ones. And then, in what would become the trigger for the current firestorm, he reconnected with a figure who had largely retreated from public view: Thomas Markle. Now, Thomas had spoken before. Many times, in fact. He had appeared on morning shows, recorded video messages, even sent handwritten letters to the press. But his credibility had suffered. With each public outburst, each staged paparazzi photo, the world grew wearier. He became tabloid wallpaper, always there, always dramatic, rarely surprising. But Bower saw potential where others saw noise. He understood that in the chaos of Thomas Markle's emotions was a vault of untapped detail, and he knew how to get to it. Sources close to the Bower project claimed that the two men met several times over the course of months. These weren't brief chats or phone interviews. They were long, grueling sessions. Thomas, who has lived much of his post-Meghan life in relative solitude in Rosarito, Mexico, reportedly welcomed the company. More importantly, he welcomed the chance to finally be heard without being edited or laughed at. According to insiders, Bower approached Thomas not as a journalist looking for a quote, but as a detective unraveling a mystery. He listened. He took notes. He challenged inconsistencies. And then, when he pressed Thomas about the early years, Meghan's schooling, her mother's role, the timeline of her upbringing. That's when the older man dropped what would become the most controversial sentence in the entire book. She's not 43. Meghan was born in 1976. She's turning 48. At first, Bauer didn't react. He simply kept writing. But he asked for details, dates, memories, documents. And Thomas, sensing both validation and vengeance, began to open up. He spoke of birth announcements that never matched, of early school enrollments that didn't line up with the supposed birth year. He mentioned old family photos marked with dates that conflicted with Meghan's official age. Letters from family members. Even conversations with Meghan herself, back when she was still just Meg and hadn't yet become a duchess. The moment was pivotal. For Thomas, it was a release. For Bauer, it was gold. And so, he shaped the chapter around it. Not just as a revelation, but as a dramatic pivot point. The kind of twist you'd expect in a political thriller or courtroom drama. A single line buried midway through the chapter, delivered without fanfare, but surrounded by corroborating anecdotes and suggestive inconsistencies. In literary terms, it wasn't shouted. It was whispered. And somehow, that made it more explosive. The pre-publication leaks were strategic. Bauer knew exactly what would light the fuse. He leaked that one line, just one line, to key journalists in both the UK and US. He knew the rest would take care of itself. And it did. The moment the quote hit newsrooms, editors knew what they had. A ticking time bomb on Meghan's birthday. Within hours, the story had jumped continents. Social media exploded. Hashtags trended. Morning shows cleared space for urgent coverage. Late-night comedians began drafting punchlines. And just like that, Tom Bauer had done it again, moved the global conversation with a single sentence. But it wasn't just about the age. It was about credibility. Because if Meghan had lied, or even allowed a misunderstanding about her age to persist, it cast a shadow over everything else she had ever said. Her childhood recollections, her speeches on authenticity, her interviews about hardship, the Oprah special, the Spotify podcasts. If one fundamental detail of her identity was called into question, what else might fall under scrutiny? And for Bauer, that was the point. Not to humiliate, but to scrutinize. Not to destroy Meghan, but to reveal what he sees as the contradictions in her public persona. Still, many critics questioned the ethics of it all. Was it really necessary to drop such a personal bombshell on someone's birthday? Was this journalism, or targeted humiliation? Some defenders of Meghan called it a cruel act of character assassination. Others labeled it shameful opportunism. But Bauer had anticipated the backlash. He issued a statement to the press that read, in part, "As a biographer, my responsibility is to present facts, not protect feelings. If Meghan's age has been misrepresented, the public deserves to know, especially when that detail has shaped public perception and commercial appeal. I stand by my work." It was classic Bauer, unapologetic, clinical, and calculated. Yet, even behind that professionalism, some saw the glimmer of something more. A personal edge. A vendetta, perhaps. Because Bauer, for all his objectivity, has never hidden his frustration with the way Harry and Meghan have managed the press. Their desire for privacy, he once said, only applies when they're not controlling the message. So perhaps this wasn't just about truth. Perhaps it was about balance. About evening the scales in a war of narratives that has consumed the royal family, the media, and the public imagination for years. As the chapter circulated and excerpts were dissected line by line, one thing became clear. Bauer's book was not just another hit piece. It was a turning point, a document that could potentially shift the tide of public opinion, not through scandal, but through doubt. It raised questions that couldn't be easily answered. And in doing so, it cast a long shadow over Meghan's birthday, one that may linger far longer than the headlines. Somewhere in Montecito, behind tall hedges and security gates, Meghan surely read every word. Not just the quote, but the build-up, the context, the surrounding evidence. And as she did, she must have felt the slow burn of a truth weaponized. Whether it was a lie or a deeply buried secret, it was now in the open. And Tom Bauer? He sat back, as he always does, letting the world debate the mess he had uncovered. The trigger had been pulled. The world was watching, and the story was just getting started. The world has seen Thomas Markle in many roles. The retired Emmy-winning lighting director, The doting father who once sent his little girl to elite schools and cheered her on from the shadows of studio sets. The confused and heartbroken man begging for reconciliation on national television, and the tabloid favorite. The aging, bitter parent portrayed as clinging to relevance while his daughter ascended to royal heights. But in this latest act, Thomas Markle is no longer pleading for connection. He has become something far more dangerous, the insider with nothing left to lose. At the core of this most recent rupture between father and daughter lies a single, seismic claim. According to Thomas, Meghan Markle is not 43 years old as her official biography states. She is, in fact, 48. 5 years may not seem significant to the average person, but in Meghan's world, where timing and perception have always been tightly controlled, those 5 years could shatter the very foundation of her public image. When Thomas made the claim to Tom Bower, it wasn't delivered with anger or vengeance. Not initially. It was presented, according to those familiar with the interview, in a tone of weary honesty, as if he had been carrying this truth for years and had finally reached a point where keeping it in was more painful than letting it out. She was born in 1976, he allegedly said. I know. I was there. And that simple declaration landed like a thunderclap. To fully grasp the magnitude of such a statement, we must go back, far back, to Meghan's childhood in Los Angeles. Born to Thomas Markle and Doria Ragland, Meghan's early years were a blend of privilege and proximity to show business. Her father's work in Hollywood gave her access to sets and stars, and her mother's yoga teacher lifestyle kept her grounded in California's wellness culture. Official documents list her birthday as August 4, 1981. That date has never been seriously contested until now. But Thomas insists the birth year is wrong. Not a typo, not a clerical error, a lie, a conscious adjustment made somewhere along the way, possibly for image, possibly for career advantage. And as unsettling as that sounds, Thomas offers more than just a statement. He claims to have evidence. During his extended conversations with Bower, Thomas allegedly provided a set of materials. Family photographs with handwritten dates. School records showing enrollment that didn't align with a 1981 birth year. Even birthday cards from relatives referring to milestone ages that contradicted Meghan's public claims. None of these have been independently verified yet, but their existence has been confirmed by Bower's publishing team. One particularly damning piece, according to insiders, is a copy of Meghan's early preschool registration form. The form, allegedly filled out by Thomas himself, lists Meghan's date of birth as August 4, 1976. This form, if authenticated, could become the smoking gun. Why, then, has this never surfaced before? The answer, Thomas says, lies in the trust he once held that this secret didn't matter, that his daughter would never become so famous, so scrutinized, that such details would be relevant. He thought, perhaps naively, that her success would remain within Hollywood's boundaries, that no one would ever dig deep enough to question a simple birth date. But when she became a duchess, the game changed. Thomas claims he remained silent out of respect. Even after their relationship crumbled, even after he was excluded from her wedding and maligned in the press, he says he kept the truth to himself. But over time, watching Meghan control the narrative, present a version of herself he no longer recognized, and deny any familial connection to him, something snapped. I've watched her lie about who she is for years, he reportedly told Bower. This isn't about age. It's about integrity. That sentiment, integrity, is a loaded word in the Markle family saga. For Meghan, integrity has been about escaping the toxicity of her past. She has portrayed herself as a woman who broke free from the emotional manipulations of estranged relatives. Her narrative is one of independence, reinvention, and resilience. But to Thomas, integrity means honesty about everything, including the parts that are inconvenient or unflattering. Their worldviews clash so fundamentally that reconciliation now seems impossible. Still, the question remains, could Thomas be mistaken? It's possible. Memories fade. Dates blur. Emotion can cloud recollection. But the documents he claims to possess, if real, could lend undeniable weight to his statement. And this is where the public's imagination has run wild. Speculation across social media is at a fever pitch. Threads are dissecting Meghan's old interviews for inconsistencies. Clips from red carpets and charity events are being time-stamped and cross-referenced. Even her college years at Northwestern University are being pulled into the spotlight. Critics argue that Thomas's timing is suspicious. Why now? Why drop this claim on her birthday? And why through Tom Bower, a man known for his critical take on the Sussexes? Some suggest it was calculated revenge, that Thomas waited for the moment when it would sting the most, that this was his way of forcing Meghan to acknowledge him again, even if only in private rage. Others believe he simply ran out of patience and decided that the world deserved to know what he believed to be true, regardless of the consequences. Regardless of motive, the damage has been done. For Meghan, this accusation is more than just a personal embarrassment. It's a potential credibility crisis. If it's proven, or even widely believed, that she lied about something as fundamental as her age, every other claim she's made could be viewed through a more skeptical lens. Her image as a role model, a champion of truth, and a victim of institutional silencing could unravel. Public trust is fragile, and once it breaks, it rarely returns in full. Within Montecito, sources claim that Meghan and Harry have gone into full crisis management mode. Lawyers are reportedly reviewing all of Bower's materials for defamation. PR advisors are debating whether to issue a denial or let the storm pass. Meghan's closest friends are allegedly split on how to respond. Some advise transparency, others warn against feeding the fire. And what of the royal family? As always, their response has been one of studied silence. But royal aides are believed to be monitoring the situation closely. Meghan's age, after all, is not just her personal business anymore. It affects royal records, titles, and the historical narrative of the House of Windsor. If it turns out that even one line in the official biography is inaccurate, there could be ripple effects in how royal historians document this modern era. There is also the matter of Harry. If Thomas is right, did Harry know? Was he told the truth at any point in their relationship? Or was he deceived, like everyone else? That question, perhaps more than any other, cuts to the heart of the Sussex marriage. Because trust, once broken, does not mend easily. And in a partnership already strained by media pressure, family estrangement, and business setbacks, this revelation could be one controversy too many. As for Thomas, he appears unmoved by the backlash. He has reportedly declined offers from major networks to appear for follow-up interviews. He says he said what needed to be said, and that the world can make its own judgment. For a man who once begged for a seat at his daughter's wedding, his transformation is stark. He no longer wants back in. He wants the truth out. And as painful as that may be, he has succeeded. His shocking claim now lives on every corner of the internet. It will be discussed in podcasts, dissected in columns, and debated across dinner tables for weeks to come. Whether true or false, it has forced a reckoning, not just for Meghan, but for everyone who has ever believed in the story she's told. Because in the end, this isn't just about a number. It's about who gets to write history and who gets erased from it. When a claim as explosive as a falsified age hits the headlines, it becomes necessary to look back, not just at the person in question, but at the timeline they've built. For Meghan Markle, that timeline has always appeared clean, consistent, and even somewhat inspirational. Born in 1981, grew up in Los Angeles, attended Immaculate Heart High School, graduated from Northwestern University, worked her way into Hollywood, broke out on Suits, and eventually stepped into the global spotlight as a duchess. A clear linear path, publicly documented, unchallenged for years. But now, in the wake of Thomas Markle's claim that Meghan is actually 5 years older than she publicly admits, that once stable chronology is being picked apart piece by piece. Internet detectives, royal commentators, former classmates, and journalists are all scrambling to piece together a revised history. And with each rediscovered article or overlooked yearbook photo, new questions emerge. Questions that cast doubt on the official record. The first thing many turn to were public documents. Meghan's birth certificate, which has circulated online for years, clearly lists her date of birth as August 4, 1981. But skeptics argue that such documents can be amended or reissued. What matters, they claim, is the surrounding context, the patterns that either support or contradict that number. And that's where things start to blur. Let's begin with education. According to Meghan's publicly shared bio, she attended Immaculate Heart High School, a prestigious all-girls Catholic school in Los Angeles. She graduated in 1999, which would make her 17 or 18, depending on her actual birth year. That aligns with a 1981 birth date. But some claim to have found discrepancies in classmate testimonials and yearbook records. One former student who claimed to be in Meghan's class described her as a few years older than most of us. Another, anonymously quoted in a forum that has since gone viral, said, "I always thought she was a little older, but it wasn't something we questioned. She carried herself like she'd seen more life than the rest of us." Of course, these are anecdotal statements, easily dismissed or debated. But they've added fuel to the fire nonetheless. Next came college records. Meghan attended Northwestern University, majoring in theater and international studies. She graduated in 2003. If she were born in 1981, she would have been around 22, perfectly in line with the traditional college track. But here again, digital sleuths have uncovered threads that hint at something off. A 2003 graduation suggests she entered college around 1999. But a few documents and photos that surfaced from her early college years raise eyebrows. In a campus interview archived from her sophomore year, she refers to herself as a little late to the party. It's a harmless phrase, likely referring to her transfer or a gap year. But now, some wonder if it was a veiled reference to an older age. More concerning is the resurfacing of an old blog entry attributed to a former faculty member who recalled Meghan as being one of our older students, incredibly mature. Again, nothing definitive. But in the context of a brewing controversy, each vague comment becomes a piece of the puzzle. Hollywood is where things get even murkier. Meghan's official acting debut is often listed as a small background role in the soap opera General Hospital in 2002. She later appeared in game shows, commercials, and indie films before landing her breakout role as Rachel Zane in Suits in 2011. At that time, she was said to be 30. But now, critics argue that she may have been closer to 35 or 36 when she got that role, an age that, while not unusual, is often considered a significant disadvantage for actresses trying to establish themselves in Hollywood. A casting agent who spoke on the condition of anonymity said, "Age is always a factor, especially for women in the industry. There's this unofficial cutoff. Producers are hesitant to cast new faces above 30. Meghan was marketed as being in her late 20s to early 30s when Suits began, and that mattered. If it turned out she was significantly older, that might explain why the age claim was never corrected. That theory begins to align with the idea that a strategic adjustment was made, not out of malice, but survival. The entertainment industry is ruthless. Many actors shave years off their official age to land roles, avoid being typecast, or maintain broader market appeal. But the difference here is that Meghan didn't stay a working actress. She became a royal. And when that happened, her story ceased to be personal. It became public history. Another interesting inconsistency comes from a 2015 interview Meghan gave while promoting Suits. In it, she was asked about aging in Hollywood. Her response, "I'm lucky to be in my early 30s and still playing these roles. I think that's changing now, but there's still pressure." It was a throwaway line, but one that directly ties her to the public timeline. If she were actually 39 at the time, it raises questions about whether her answer was genuine or rehearsed. Then there are the family photos. These are perhaps the most visually striking pieces of evidence fueling speculation. Online sleuths have pulled up side-by-side comparisons of Meghan at various ages, examining everything from the quality of the photo paper to the style of her clothes, the age of the people around her, and even background decor. In one photo marked as being from 1984, Meghan appears to be 4 or 5 years old. That would match a 1979 or 1980 birth date more closely than the claimed 1981. Perhaps more damning is a family vacation snapshot, said to be from 1983, where Meghan, wearing oversized sunglasses and holding a juice box, is estimated by some to look about 7. Thomas Markle himself reportedly referenced that very photo during his interview with Bauer, saying, "We took that trip the summer before she turned 8. I remember it because I nearly missed work that week." There's no way she was 2 years old, as the current record would suggest. Of course, photographs are unreliable timestamps. Children develop at different rates. Appearances can be deceiving. A tall 4-year-old can easily pass for 6 in the right lighting. But when combined with the other inconsistencies, these photos deepen the mystery. At the heart of this investigation is the unspoken understanding that age, especially for women in the public eye, is a complicated weapon. Too young, and you're dismissed. Too old, and you're replaced. Meghan has spent her entire adult life walking that tightrope, and for many, it's understandable if she blurred the lines in order to survive. But survival tactics in Hollywood don't always translate well to royal life. As a duchess, everything about Meghan's past was scrutinized: her friends, her family, her clothing, her politics, her resume. Yet somehow, this most basic of facts, her birth year, escaped close inspection until now. And that's what makes it so potent. The idea that a global audience, the royal institution, and millions of fans accepted a timeline that might not have been true is unsettling. And perhaps that's why this chapter of the story stings more than others. Because it's not about whether Meghan is 5 years older or younger. It's about what it means if she actively chose to obscure the truth. In an era where truth is currency, any hint of fabrication carries weight. As the re-examination continues, new voices have entered the conversation. Former co-workers, childhood neighbors, even a supposed classmate from an acting workshop in the early 90s. Each brings a memory, a photo, or a document they claim helps fill in the blanks. Whether any of it can be verified remains to be seen. But the fact that these people are speaking at all suggests that the dam has cracked. And for Meghan, whose narrative has always been about controlling the story, that might be the most dangerous development yet. Because once the timeline unravels, it's not just a question of when she was born. It's a question of who she's really been all along. At the center of this unfolding controversy, where headlines scream betrayal and timelines unravel, a single, persistent question looms. Why? Why would Meghan Markle, a woman who has advocated for authenticity, women's empowerment, and speaking one's truth, allegedly lie about something as fundamental as her age? Why risk public shame, professional scrutiny, and the unraveling of her meticulously crafted public persona for the sake of 5 years? To answer that, we need to step away from the royal palaces, from Twitter storms and biographer feuds, and step into the more intimate world of image management, the murky space where celebrity, survival, and ambition intersect. In the entertainment industry, age isn't just a number, it's a brand. It defines the roles you're considered for, the way producers view your relevance, and the kind of stories audiences are willing to believe you belong in. For women, in particular, age is a double-edged sword. Too young, and you're seen as inexperienced. Too old, and you're seen as outdated, past your peak. It's a brutal dichotomy, and for many actresses, the unspoken rule is simple. If you want to survive, shave off a few years. And Meghan, before she ever married a prince or sat down with Oprah, was just another working actress in Hollywood trying to catch a break. In that world, where youth is currency and perception is everything, trimming 5 years off your age is considered, by some, an unspoken rite of passage. It's not ethical, it's not admirable, but it's understandable, at least from a careerist's point of view. In interviews over the years, Meghan has alluded to these challenges. In a 2015 sit-down with LUK, she said, "I've always been slightly older than the other actresses starting out, and it definitely affected the kind of roles I got." That statement, viewed with today's lens, suddenly carries a new weight. If she were born in 1981, she would have been about 34 at the time of that interview. But if Thomas Markle's claim is true, she was already approaching 39. That's not just slightly older. That's approaching what casting agents would call the character-actor threshold, a place where lead roles dwindle and mothers of teenage leads become the go-to offers. Could it be that Meghan, faced with that career ceiling, made a strategic decision early in her acting journey to alter her narrative ever so slightly? That she decided to recalibrate the clock in order to stay relevant just a little longer? Several casting directors who worked during that era have weighed in anonymously since Bauer's book excerpt dropped. One said, "It was very common for actresses to change their resume ages. Most agencies knew and didn't care. As long as the client could play younger, it wasn't a problem." Another added, "There's a difference between lying and surviving. I don't blame her if she did it. She wouldn't be the first or the last." This brings up a broader cultural issue. The world often punishes women for aging. In Hollywood, once a woman turns 40, The roles become sparse, the paychecks smaller, the scripts more one-dimensional. Men are allowed to age into power. Gray hair becomes distinguished, wrinkles become wisdom. But for women, age can be a death sentence to opportunity. So perhaps Meghan didn't see her decision as deceit, but as necessity. Perhaps she told herself, as so many others in her shoes have, they'll never hire me at my real age. So I'll say I'm 29 instead of 34. Who does it hurt? But the answer, now, seems clear. It might hurt her. Because once she left the world of casting calls and audition tapes and stepped into the most scrutinized institution in the world, everything changed. Royalty, unlike Hollywood, relies on rigid systems of record, chronology, and unshakable tradition. Everything is documented. Everything is archived. There are no fuzzy details in the House of Windsor. Your birth year isn't just a line in a resume. It's a public record, a genealogical entry, a matter of historic accuracy. If Meghan did adjust her age during her time in Hollywood, and then failed to correct it during her transition into royalty, that adjustment evolved into something else entirely. It became a contradiction that could now be used to question everything she says, everything she's written, every speech she's made. Imagine standing in front of the United Nations, delivering a speech about female empowerment, authenticity, and self-worth, while privately hiding a version of your story you fear might undermine your credibility. The emotional weight of that alone is staggering. It's not hard to understand why someone in Meghan's position might feel trapped by their own narrative. Once you publicly commit to a version of your history, even if it was born from pressure and self-protection, it becomes nearly impossible to walk it back. The lie, if it is a lie, starts to own you. And the longer it lives, the more dangerous it becomes. This, perhaps, is the root of the current storm. Not that Meghan might have once told a small lie, but that she may have felt she had no choice. That she may have spent years living inside a version of herself that began as self-preservation and turned into an identity prison. And now, with her father forcing the issue into the open, she has nowhere left to hide. Critics of Meghan argue that authenticity has always been a cornerstone of her public image. That her brand, crafted carefully through interviews, books, documentaries, and podcasts, is rooted in emotional truth. They say that a lie about her age, no matter how minor, chips away at that foundation. If she lied about something so basic, what else has she reshaped? The story about being denied help for mental health? The claims about racism in the royal household? The narrative of a woman trying to do good, only to be silenced and shunned? But her defenders see it differently. They see this as yet another example of a woman being punished for doing what many powerful men have done for centuries, adjusting their story to fit their ambitions. They point to decades of men in politics, business, and entertainment who've reinvented themselves with falsehoods and walked away unscathed. Why? They ask, must Meghan be held to a different standard? And perhaps that's the most troubling part of all. This isn't just about age. It's about gender, about power, about the unforgiving standards placed on women in public life. Meghan may have trimmed years off her age. She may have thought it harmless. But in doing so, she touched a nerve that runs through every industry, every system that values appearance over substance. There's also the deeply personal layer to consider. What if the age change wasn't just about career survival, but about emotional escape? What if Meghan associated those 5 years with pain, family trauma, identity struggle, rejection, invisibility? If so, then shaving 5 years off wasn't just cosmetic. It was therapeutic, a reset, a way of reinventing herself not just professionally, but emotionally. Some insiders close to Meghan have long said that she viewed her 30s as a rebirth, that she entered a new era of confidence, purpose, and independence after years of self-doubt. If the age narrative helped her step into that chapter with strength, then maybe the lie wasn't about deceit, but healing. But regardless of motive, the truth, or perception of the truth, is now out of her hands. The damage has been done. Public belief is swaying, and the court of public opinion rarely waits for nuance. So, why would Meghan Markle lie about her age? To be seen, to be hired, to be cast, to be accepted, to be believed, to be loved, to be free from a past that might have once made her feel small. And now, in trying to protect that freedom, she may have exposed the one thing she feared losing most: credibility. Because in the world she lives in now, being off by 5 years isn't just a number. It's a scandal. For someone who has spent years mastering the art of composed silence, Meghan Markle's reaction to her father's explosive age revelation may have finally broken the illusion of control. As the headlines spread like wildfire, and every news outlet from London to Los Angeles dissected the statement, "She's not 43, she's 48." All eyes turned toward Montecito. What would Meghan do? How would she respond to a claim so personal, so fundamentally threatening to the foundation of her carefully cultivated public persona? The answer, at least according to those closest to her, is that she didn't respond with public words. She responded with stunned stillness. In the hours following the release of the Tom Bower chapter featuring Thomas Markle's damning revelation, a tight-lipped panic reportedly swept through Meghan's private team. Archewell employees were instructed to avoid the press. Legal counsel was summoned within minutes. The phones didn't stop ringing. But inside Meghan's estate, the atmosphere was not fiery or chaotic. It was cold, quiet, and deeply unsettled. One source familiar with the Sussex household, speaking anonymously, described the mood as eerily calm, like the calm before a storm, or maybe the calm after one. Meghan, the source claims, was informed of the revelation by a staffer who showed her the digital headline on a tablet. She didn't scream. She didn't throw anything. She just froze, the source said. She went pale, completely pale, and then she whispered something like, "He didn't," and then she walked out of the room. That reaction, quiet as it may seem, reportedly signaled to those around her that this cut deeper than any tabloid story, any paparazzi intrusion, or even the famously painful Oprah interview aftermath. This wasn't about public opinion. This was about identity. About her truth being pulled apart by the very man who once taught her how to ride a bike, helped her with school projects, and drove her to early auditions. According to those briefed on the internal crisis discussions, Meghan locked herself away in her private study for several hours. Harry, who was in the middle of a call regarding one of their charity initiatives, reportedly canceled the rest of his day to be with her. It wasn't just support, it was containment. The situation, by then, was already spiraling in the media, and the longer Meghan remained silent, the more the speculation grew. Social media platforms were ruthless. Hashtags like #MeghanIs48 and #MarkleTimeline were trending worldwide. Armchair detectives began cross-referencing photos, classmate testimonies, and even astrological birth charts. Meanwhile, public forums were flooded with fierce debates. Some called the revelation petty. Others called it long overdue truth. But everyone seemed to agree on one thing. Meghan had to say something. Her silence, they argued, was beginning to look like an admission. And yet, still, nothing. No Instagram post. No statement from Archewell. No leaks to friendly media outlets. Just silence. Insiders suggest that the silence wasn't accidental. Meghan was reportedly advised by her legal and public relations team to avoid making any reactive statements. If you respond in anger, one crisis consultant reportedly warned, you give weight to his words. If you deny too quickly, you invite fact-checking. Wait. Watch. Let the news cycle dilute the fire. But Meghan, despite her years in the public eye, has never been particularly skilled at waiting. For someone who spent much of her adult life controlling her image, this felt like surrender. According to another source, Meghan was pacing, reviewing old emails, and even asking staff to retrieve childhood documents, photos, anything that could prove her birth year beyond question. She kept saying, "I need to prove him wrong," over and over again, the source claimed. But the truth is, she didn't know what he had handed over to Bower. That's what really scared her. What made the situation even worse, reportedly, was not just the accusation, but the context in which it was delivered. On her birthday, in the middle of what was meant to be a private, low-profile celebration. A day that should have been filled with messages of love and resilience, now reduced to headlines questioning her truth. The impact extended beyond Meghan's personal emotional state. Within the Archewell Foundation, staff morale reportedly dipped overnight. Some team members feared reputational fallout. Sponsors and partners, while not pulling away, allegedly began requesting additional assurances. One insider from a corporate partner said, "When a scandal like this hits, even if it seems trivial, we have to reevaluate how the public might perceive the brands we're associated with." Even Netflix and Spotify, the two platforms through which Meghan had signed major production and podcast deals, were reportedly monitoring the public response closely. And in the media world, perception is everything. But Meghan wasn't just feeling the professional ripple. She was feeling the raw, deeply human wound of a daughter being struck by her father on one of the most personal levels imaginable. This wasn't the first time Thomas Markle had embarrassed his daughter in public, but it was perhaps the most targeted. In interviews past, his comments focused on being excluded from her wedding, on feeling abandoned or misrepresented. But this went beyond pain. This was character assassination, delivered with the full force of history and paternal intimacy. He knew how old she was. He was there. That was the crux of his claim. And Meghan knew that, whether true or not, the world would believe that if anyone had the power to reveal her hidden truths, it was him. Her reaction to that betrayal was reportedly visceral. "He's not my father anymore," she allegedly said, again and again, to her closest aides and to Harry himself. Those 5 words, simple, tragic, and final, reportedly ended any possibility of future reconciliation. For Harry, the situation was equally complex. He has never had a real relationship with Thomas Markle, but as a man who has been publicly accused of abandoning his own family, he reportedly felt an eerie sense of recognition in Meghan's anguish. "Now she knows how it feels," Harry allegedly told a confidant, "to be betrayed by the one person who's supposed to protect you." Still, while Harry was sympathetic, he also recognized the gravity of the situation. Their empire, their brand, their future depended on public trust. And even if the age lie, if proven true, seemed small in comparison to other scandals, it carried a symbolic weight. It wasn't just about how old Meghan was. It was about what else she may have manipulated and why. At one point during that fraught weekend, Meghan reportedly floated the idea of sitting down for another televised interview, this time with a sympathetic host, perhaps Oprah or Gayle King, to directly address the accusation. Her team, however, was divided. Some advisors encouraged transparency. "Tell your story before someone else does," one reportedly said. But others warned that re-entering the public arena too quickly would only reignite scrutiny. "This isn't Oprah 2.0, another advisor allegedly countered. "This is damage control. We need quiet, not cameras." Ultimately, Meghan agreed to wait, to watch the narrative unfold before deciding her next move. But waiting is not something she's accustomed to. And that discomfort, according to insiders, has taken its toll. Sources close to the couple say Meghan's sleep has been interrupted, her schedule emptied of all public appearances, and her daily routine shifted entirely inward. She is said to be hyper-focused on recovering old photos, reaching out to childhood contacts, even reviewing her passport history in the event that an official record needs to be presented. She's looking for certainty in a world that suddenly feels completely uncertain, one aide reportedly observed. And perhaps that's the cruel irony of this entire episode. For years, Meghan had told the world that her estrangement from her father was a painful but necessary step for her mental health, for her family, for her truth. And just when she believed she had moved past that chapter, just when she thought she had taken control of her story again, he returned. Not with pleas, but with proof, or what he claims is proof. And in doing so, he did not ask for forgiveness. He demanded credibility. Meghan's reaction, then, isn't just emotional. It's existential. If Thomas Markle's claim is believed, it doesn't just damage her brand. It shatters the idea that she has ever truly been in control of her life. And for a woman who built her empire on the power of her voice, silence has never felt so loud. For most of his life, Prince Harry has worn the label of the outsider, the rebellious royal, the misunderstood brother, the spare, born into a world of tradition and duty, expected to smile on cue and disappear into the background. But in recent years, Harry redefined himself, first as a husband, then as a father, and ultimately as the co-architect of a new life far removed from the constraints of Buckingham Palace. With Meghan Markle by his side, he carved out a new narrative, one of emotional healing, autonomy, and personal freedom. And yet, in the heart of this current firestorm, where Meghan's age has become the subject of global speculation and familial betrayal, Harry finds himself once again in a familiar, uncomfortable role, stuck in the middle of a war not of his own making. yet forced to pick a side. This time, however, the dynamics are messier, more personal, and potentially more damaging than anything he's previously faced. Reports from inside the Sussex camp suggest that Harry was blindsided by Thomas Markle's claim. He had no forewarning about what Tom Bower was planning to publish, no insider tip from the press. He found out, like everyone else, when the news broke online. And according to one aide who witnessed the moment, his immediate response was a mix of disbelief, exhaustion, and quiet rage. He stared at his phone for a long time, the source said. He kept saying, "This isn't real. This can't be real." Then he looked up at one of the senior team members and asked, "Did you know about this?" No one did. That scared him. Harry has always struggled with trust. Years of leaks, betrayals, and invasions of privacy have made him guarded and suspicious. But nothing prepared him for the possibility that the woman he sacrificed everything to protect might have withheld something as fundamental as her age. And that's where the dilemma began. If Meghan lied about her age and never told him, then Harry has been living a version of their story that isn't completely true. Every documentary, podcast, and charity campaign they've built together has relied on a public narrative of authenticity. Their whole brand is centered on the notion that they broke free from a system that forced them to wear masks. But now, it appears that at least one mask may have been self-imposed. If Meghan didn't lie, and Thomas's claim is false, then Harry is facing another painful and familiar pattern, watching a family member weaponize the truth to hurt someone he loves. Either way, he's cornered. Privately, insiders say Harry has become increasingly withdrawn in the days following the publication of Bower's chapter. While Meghan has been emotionally reactive, cycling through anger, panic, and frustration, Harry has gone quiet. He's attending to his duties, managing their team, taking calls, but emotionally, he's gone inward. He's trying to process whether this is just another smear, or if it's something deeper, said one close associate. It's not about the number. It's about the possibility that the trust he's given so freely may not have been returned in full. The strain on their relationship, while not yet visible to the outside world, is said to be palpable behind closed doors. There are hushed disagreements, long silences over dinner, moments where Meghan defends her past choices, and Harry listens, expressionless, arms crossed, staring into the distance. He's not yelling. He's not accusing. But he's different, said the insider. You can feel it in the room. It's like something in him is trying to realign. Complicating matters further is Harry's own family history with the truth. He spent years unraveling the deceptions of royal life, secrets kept from him about his mother's death, lies spread about his wife, press manipulation. For Harry, honesty is more than a virtue. It's a necessity for survival. And now, for the first time, he may be questioning whether the person he trusts most in the world has been completely honest with him. Some in his circle believe he's trying to rationalize the situation. That if Meghan did obscure her age early in her career, she did so out of necessity, not manipulation. That it was a strategy, not a betrayal. And yet, others close to him say Harry is also haunted by the what else question. If her age was altered, what else might have been? Did she embellish other aspects of her backstory? Are there more gaps in the narrative he believed to be gospel? This uncertainty is something Harry is ill-equipped to handle. During their infamous Oprah interview, Harry spoke emotionally about feeling trapped within the royal institution. But in truth, he's always been trapped by his loyalty, to his mother, to his brother, to Meghan. And now, as that loyalty is tested, the pressure is building. Advisors have reportedly urged him to issue a joint statement with Meghan. Something brief, something reassuring, a denial or clarification, a firm dismissal of the claim that could begin to reverse the public narrative. But Harry has refused, for now. He doesn't want to lie, one source said. And he doesn't want to be caught defending something that turns out to be complicated. He's trying to buy time. That time, however, is rapidly running out. The longer Harry waits, the more questions arise. Why hasn't he spoken up? Why hasn't he defended his wife the way he did after the UK tabloids attacked her? Why is the palace so quiet about it all? These questions, while unfair in some respects, are adding to the pressure. And Meghan feels it. According to sources close to her, Meghan has asked Harry more than once to go public with a statement of support. Not a defense of her age, but a reaffirmation of their unity. a symbolic gesture that would show the world they are still on the same page. But Harry, they say, has deflected. He told her, "Let's wait. Let's not escalate it." And that crushed her, one friend reported. To make matters even more complex, Harry is said to be receiving subtle messages from the royal family, back-channel communications indicating that the institution is watching, waiting, and quietly documenting every move. While the palace remains publicly silent, royal insiders are reportedly amused by the scandal, seeing it as a moment of karma. One aide reportedly said, "They wanted the world to believe they were truth-tellers, that they escaped the cage. And now look. They're the ones who can't keep their story straight." This schadenfreude, however subtle, is not lost on Harry. Privately, he's said to be furious, not at the royal family for their silence, but at the fact that he now finds himself vulnerable to the same scrutiny he once condemned. The man who fled England to find peace is once again in the eye of a global storm. And this time, he can't blame the monarchy for starting it. This is personal. This is internal. And yet, through it all, Harry remains fiercely protective of Meghan. Even in his doubt, he reportedly refuses to let anyone speak poorly of her in his presence. Even as questions swirl, he maintains a wall of loyalty. But loyalty doesn't mean peace. Loyalty doesn't mean clarity. Right now, Harry is navigating uncharted emotional territory. He is a husband who wants to believe his wife. He is a public figure who must preserve credibility. He is a father who wants stability for his children. And he is a man who may be realizing that in protecting Meghan from the outside world, he never thought to look inward. This dilemma, this painful, silent, internal conflict, is one that no press statement can fix. As days pass and the scandal shows no signs of fading, Harry remains where he has always been, in the middle, between Meghan and the public, between truth and loyalty, between the past and the future. Only now, that middle ground feels more fragile than ever. And if it collapses, it won't be because the world turned against him. It will be because the one person he believed in unconditionally may not have told him everything.